What up? This is Yinka Diz.
Peace, this is Outlaw.
And you listen to the 80s Baby Podcast.
And on today's episode, we have a tribute for the debut album of Blu Exile, Below the Heavens, released July 17th, 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is almost a put you up, only because I have heard this album before we did the cycle. Several times, actually. Probably about like 5 to 10 times I think I heard this album, but I wasn't really there when it came out. I heard it after the fact because someone suggested it and it was good.
Right.
So I'm not as familiar. I'm probably not as like, this album is not as in my bones as it is with you.
Yeah.
But this is definitely a project that I'm familiar with, and I definitely recognize it as worthy of the tribute treatment from the 80s Baby. So we are here to give that to you today. And this is one that you wanted to discuss, right?
Yeah, man. Like, I think this is an important album. I think that this is an album that a lot of our fans, it would seem like, would also probably really resonate.
I think so, yeah. My hunch is that this will be a popular listen amongst our fans.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So why do you think that is, though? I have my reasoning for that hunch, but what's your reasoning? Or what's your idea there?
So I mean, I in my own brain, and you know, y'all can laugh at me if you want, but I almost call this like the last great underground hip hop album.
Okay.
Like, and what I mean by that is like this time frame, like this kind of 07, 08 time frame, right? Into 09 is where you start to get like Mindy's and you start to the budgets for recording albums is a lot cheaper and things like that. So like you don't have that fissure or that divide between, oh, this is an underground album and this is a mainstream album.
Mm-hmm.
Like the, you know, the similar budgets, similarly made.
Yeah.
And so I think that you know, I don't know, this album resonates to people in a different way.
What I can say from my experience with this album is that I've had people who I wouldn't necessarily expect to know this album.
Really?
Just like bring it up in conversation.
Okay. Oh, so it's like one of those I'm knowledgeable, like,
no, it's not even like that. That's
okay.
the thing. It's not even like, oh, I'm trying to flex and show you. They just happen to know this album.
Okay.
And this was an album that I didn't even hear about until like 2014, 2015. Of course, we'll get into that with the Where Were You, because I wasn't listening to hip hop music when this album really came out. But like even the person who suggested that I listen to this, like it just wasn't. It didn't like it doesn't have like a commercial vibe to it, right?
Yeah.
These aren't like necessarily like hip hop household names in the commercial sense.
Yeah.
Yet there's a lot of folks who don't listen to like underground music who are like very familiar with this project.
Yo.
And so I figure if they like it, then our fans who had to listen to us, like our underground fans who have to listen to us talk about all this commercial shit, are probably gonna love this album. So
fair. Yeah. The reason I'm laughing is because you and I have had a couple of conversations on this podcast about a previous conversation that we had about you know, me being like, how come there aren't more hip hop albums like ... Yeah. And this is actually the album that I was talking about.
Gotcha.
And so it's funny that you say that you didn't listen to it to 2014, because I was probably talking to you about this in like 2007, 2008.
It's probably fair.
Like, yo, you should listen to this. This is what we've been missing. This is what everybody should be making. So it's just funny because this was the album I was talking about.
Where were you when this came out?
I was I must have been in Richmond. I must have just moved to Richmond.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, Jelani telling me about this album. And the reason I remember is because it's so interesting. Like, we as hip hop artists, we kind of make ourselves in a specific image almost when we first start out.
Yeah.
And so me as the kid that went to UVA and was a rapper and was from California, Jay's like, this album is bread and butter, what you should be listening to. Like, how have you not heard this?
Yeah.
And he like drilled into my skull, like, yo, you got to hear this kid. He's from where you're from. He, you know, he's super dope. He's not like on this stupid, because I didn't like the like larger than life, The Game types of rappers that were like, you know, oh, I'm a hyper gangster. I shot 30 people in one day. Like, I'm cool on that shit. This is like the LA everyman story. And you know, I think that this you know kind of resonated with me from that perspective. So where were you?
So in 2007, when this comes out, I've just graduated from school, and so I'm in DC, and I think at this point musically, like my experiences in DC around the time 2007, I was very much going out to like a lot of jazz clubs and things like that. So I'm listening to this is before U Street became fully gentrified. This is when back when like U Street was like black,
Okay.
right? But like a lot of educated black folks were going out there.
Okay.
So Marvin might be starting to pop up a little bit, maybe because Obama's about to get into office. So like
but
those things
like
are there.
Bohemian Caverns.
But yeah, there's like Bohemian Caverns, and then like Duke City was a jazz spot, and Twins Jazz, and all these other things like HR 57. Like there's all these jazz spots that I'm going to.
Okay.
And so that's a lot of music that I'm listening to, right? I'm also still into classic rock, obviously. I'm still making beats, but like my beats are a reflection of like a lot of the music that I'm making. And the type of hip hop that I do like would be something like what Just Blaze was sampling, right? So like On the Incredible or like Oh My God, like those types of beats. Like I'm trying to find like rock songs like that. Yeah.
Okay.
But also I have discovered Fela Kuti around this time too. So I'm also getting into that kind of like world music mindset, if you will.
Okay.
So at this time, I'm completely just like, fuck hip hop, right? Like if I know it, if I'm familiar with it, Q-Tip is Renaissance, I think is going to come out in the next year. Yeah. Most stuff is going to have his like ecstatic album come out. Like if it's an artist that I'm familiar with, I'll listen to it. Jay-Z has his American Gangster come out the next year, but like I don't really care about hip hop at this time because my thing is like most of the commercial stuff, you know what I mean? Like T-Pain is coming onto the scene. What is that? Yeah. Kanye West is about to drop his 808s and Heartbeats. What is that? We might like that album retrospectively, but at the time I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think the underground rap that I listened to, that I was familiar with, like a lot of that stuff just kind of like disappointed me. I didn't feel like they were breaking any barriers. I didn't feel like they were doing anything new. So I was just completely disinterested with hip hop music.
Yeah.
When I finally did hear this album, I think it was like in 2014 or 2015, and I was out at Love, and somehow like I got into a conversation with a girl. I guess she was cute. We never like talked after this or whatever, but we were having a conversation about music, and she was like, "Oh, like I like stuff that's kind of like off the beaten path." I was like, "Oh, so what is that?" I'm thinking she's gonna put me on to some like artist from like Brazil or some shit, right? Mm-hmm. She's like, she tells me about this Blu Exile Below the Heavens album. Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay, like what is that? It's like, no, it's just like a really, really good rap album. It's better than anything else that's out, this, that, and the other. So I decided to like go back and listen to it. And I was like impressed. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, like this is cool. Like, and I listened to the album a few more times after that. I was like, nah, like I get it. Like this is like a really genuine, like good piece of music. Yeah. And every so often, like every like 2 or 3 years, I'd go back and listen to it a couple times because I'm like, yeah, it's just a good album that I need to listen to. So that's kind of like my where were you when I guess was first introduced to the album. And then of course the fact that like people would just like in conversation like reference this album as if I should know it, but like not trying to be like, oh, I'm a smart person, I know this album. Just assuming that I know it would bring this up. And so that's when I was like, okay, like I guess like this is almost like beyond cult classic. This is like a genuine, just like a hip hop classic. Yeah. That maybe is from an artist that they don't have another hip hop classic in their catalog. Yeah. And maybe they're not that traditional name, like a Jadakiss or a Nas or a Redman or whatever. But like, nevertheless, like, yeah, this is just, just a really, really good piece of music. Yeah. So that's just kind of like my experiences with it. Right. So, it's, like I said, it's kind of like a put you up because I wasn't really there in the moment. But nevertheless, this is an album that I was familiar with before we were having this conversation.
Gotcha. I would say that Jay putting me onto this project is also interesting because like I feel like him as an MC, like this is the MC that I would compare Jay to the most. Yeah. And it's very interesting because, I always say that like Jay was kind of like Wale before Wale in terms of like being someone who was a poet and an MC at the same time and kind of combined both of those things. Jay was also, when you look at us as a 3-man group, like each of us kind of had different strengths and weaknesses or whatever. But Jay always kind of tried to inject melody into what we were doing in a way that was different from me and E. Yeah. If I had to compare E to an MC, I would probably say like some sort of a combination between like a Doom and a Ghostface. With a better voice than both of them, in my opinion. I love E's voice.
E is one of my favorite. E is probably of people that I've, I guess, grown up with in the hip hop world, whatever. Even though I did work with Ibrahima on that one beat.
The Firecracker.
But aside from that, though, like E is my favorite MC of anyone, including Carlos, because Carlos is nice too. He's my favorite MC of anyone like I've been around. I miss the fact that he stopped rapping because I loved him. He was great.
Yeah, he's dope. But yeah, Jay's flow is very similar to Blue's, and I think that it's interesting that Blue talks on this project, about his father being a pastor and kind of how that influences his perspective because he was also very, I mean, Jay was also very like introspective, and he had a lot of existential like themes in his music or in his verses, more so than the other two of us. And so it's interesting that this project resonated with him so much because I would say that like this is kind of like the fully manifested version of what Jay's persona would be probably as an MC.
Gotcha. Okay. Critical reception of this album.
Very positive, all the way across. I think I saw Pitchfork gave it like an 8.7 out of 10, which is great from a Pitchfork perspective. This says Hip Hop DX gave it a 4, Rap Reviews gave it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time the worst that it got was like a 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those that perhaps at the time like it was seen as very good, and then retrospectively it's like the fact that it still continues to like grow with us and age with us. I think once you get to that point, you're like, nah, this album is like, it's just like cemented as a hip hop classic.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the aesthetic is dated.
It is,
but at the same time, they do
even
such
for 2007, the aesthetic is.
You
dated.
think so?
I think so. Yeah, a little bit.
I think that was right around the time where it was becoming like dated. I guess
It's not. It's dated. Probably is not the best word. I would say maybe at the time I think it was more vintage.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of it that reminds me of like the early to mid 90s in terms of like, kind of like vibe and flow and like the soul of the record.
Like you can tell they like are fans of Pete Rock.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pete Rock, Nas.
Right.
But I think the production is very much like, okay, like they've updated the production. Yeah, they're still sampling, but like you could tell it's like, no, this is actually like equalized and pitched perfectly.
Yeah, that's
you know
true.
what I mean?
Yep.
So dated is probably not the right word, but I would say even in 2007, I would guess that this probably had like a vintage sound to it.
Yeah, for sure.
A little bit. So should we get to the overarching highlights?
Yeah.
Why don't you start us off?
Cool. So I've got production. I think Exile's beats are pretty masterful, and they work really well with the bars here from Blue. I said the bars equal parts lethal and introspective.
Yeah.
Blue does a masterful job of being introspective without being preachy, and barring up without sounding corny or like a lyrical miracle rapper. I said the chemistry between Blue and Exile.
Yes.
I mean, it's just like a really perfect marriage. Even on the record where they go back and forth.
Yeah.
I don't love that joint. I think it's a little corny. But at the same time, but the beat is dope, and you can hear that they're like genuinely friends, and they like relate on shit outside of just them making music together. I said narrative. Blue offers a fresh, introspective, and at times even self-deprecating narrative throughout the project. And I said in a time frame where honesty and groundedness were lacking in hip hop, that was a big deal. Especially being from LA, where a lot of the rappers from LA that were getting attention at the time were like super gangbang, Crip, Blood. I shot 700 people. Like that was dope. And then I have some kind of sub ones, which is to the point of narrative relatability.
Yes.
Like I feel like he was very, very relatable as an MC on here. In multiple different ways.
Yes, absolutely.
And then lastly, themes. I said I feel like the themes are relatable, but they're also existential. So, for example, he mentions that his father was a pastor, which explains a lot, even the concept, like below the heavens. Where he talks about like our existence and why we're here and etc. But then at the same time, like relates it in ways about, being a father or, just different things that are very relatable. So that's my last one. What I missed?
So I'm not sure how much you missed. I have a lot of the same highlights. I mean, if we're talking about Exile, I think that the palette that he creates is very consistent and is very, there's so many tracks where even if I didn't want to listen to the lyrics, like even if I didn't want to pay attention, I could just sit to the track and just like vibe to it. Even though it's a lot of loops, right? The songs don't always have to progress and whatnot, which is something that I like. But it's just very, very good, easy listening, and like there's just so many that's just like dope pops on here. It's like a really cool vibe. So you have to give credit to Exile for that.
For sure.
I agree with you about the chemistry and the cohesion between the two of them. I mean, like you can very, very much tell that it's just like, I have a beat here. And like I feel like you can hear Exile's executive production in the themes that Blu delivers. In terms of like Exile probably had a theme for a song in mind, and Blu like executes it and like it delivers it perfectly.
Yeah.
Right. So there's just very, very good chemistry between the two of them. I think the thing that I love about Blu as a highlight for me is that like his flow is great. And he is very like he is wordy without being too wordy. Like he
Right.
doesn't stuff. There's no extra syllables. Like
Yeah.
Talib Kweli can learn a lot from Blu. He doesn't. There's no syllable added where it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I agree.
So while his lyrics are full, like he doesn't take a lot of like breaths and pause.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to because everything just works so well.
Right.
The relatability of Blu is something that I will touch on a lot when we get into the specific track for track analysis. One of the other things I wanted to say about Blu is that oftentimes when I like tend to highlight specific bars, I'll just like, you know, highlight the one bar or two bars, and I'll do that in here, right? Like there's a couple of tracks in my notes where I only like highlight a couple bars or two that I like.
Right.
But so many times I just ended up just like grabbing the entire verse.
Yeah.
Because even though he is barring up in specific lines here and there, like so many times, like the entire verse just like works together.
Yeah.
And it's telling a narrative, and it's just like, nah, like what he's saying here at the end lands because of how we set it up at the beginning.
Exactly.
And that's something that even some of the greatest rappers
Yeah.
that I love, like
Don't
even
do
someone like Jay-Z doesn't always do that. Like he's just got bars and everything is just hot.
Right.
But it's just like, nah, like he's setting up things in a way that like Andre 3000 does.
Right.
It. Where it's like, nah, like it works because the whole verse just like works together perfectly.
Yeah. He used to call them extended metaphors, and like he does like great with like extended metaphors, internal and external rhymes, slant rhymes. Like he's got complex rhyme structure in this.
The crazy thing about this though is that I've heard other Blu and Exile projects that didn't land for me the way that this does. And I don't know how they were able to get lightning in the bottle on this first effort and not do it on the second. Maybe on the next one they were trying to recreate the magic here, and they just you just can't. Sometimes you force things and it just doesn't work. Nevertheless, though, they landed all on here. So this
I agree.
And the sequencing on this album is really good as well. There's like a 7 or 8 track run where it's just like nothing but highlights for me. So that's those are my overarching highlights. Do you have any overarching lowlights?
No.
I don't have any as well. This is one of the few albums where I don't think I have any overarching lowlights at all.
Yeah, it's
really good. So this should be so if you tune into this because you like to hear us shit on some of these records, you're not really going to hear that on this project
at all. Not even a little bit.
Yeah. So all right, well let's just get into the track for track analysis then.
Let's do it.
My World is the opener, the intro. What you got to say about this one?
Highlight. I think it's an excellent intro. Gotcha. I think it's an excellent sample choice. And I feel like Blu just comes in with the bars. And this is the first thing from Blu that I ever heard, right? Jay tells me to listen to this, and this is track 1. I press play and I'm immediately impressed by the production, by the bars, etc. And you know, we love this sample because this is also used in one of our favorite Ghostface records.
Yes. Shaky
Dog. So
Shaky Dog stuttering when he got the bigger hook on you.
So I definitely love this joint. What do you?
So it's not a highlight for me exactly because even though I think the sample choice is great for what he's doing in the song, and he says a lot about his name. You better spell it correctly, not the E. Drop the E, right? Even though the sample choice is great with My World is Blue and how he incorporates it into like the hook and everything like that, right?
Yeah.
It's nowhere near as good as Shaky Dog. Like, and I'm not trying to knock it, but I'm just like, it's such like an obvious like same sample choice, but that one is so obviously better to me that this is just not a highlight for me. But it's obviously not a low light. I don't have any low lights on this.
I mean, they would have come out around the same time, so I don't think it was like they heard Shaky Dog and then they did it.
Shaky Dog is 2006, and then My World is 2007.
Yeah, but I don't think they did that because I read somewhere. So I think this album was kind of made over the course of like 3 years.
Yeah.
One of the or two of the records were made when he was 19, and then they wrapped it up when he was 22.
Yeah.
But this particular record, the story that they had about it was this is the only sample that was sampled off of a CD. And so apparently Blu and Exile like actually kind of produced in tandem. So Blu would hear certain things and be like, yo, sample this. And so he heard the Dells sample and he's like, yo, they're saying Blue on this, sample it.
Yeah.
And so apparently Exile sampled it, and then something happened with his MPC disc. It got corrupted or something. So they lost the beat. So then they had to make it over again, and they kept trying to find this Dells song on vinyl. And they couldn't find it. And they were going from record store to record store and they couldn't get it. And then finally they had to turn in the album. So then he's like, all right, fuck it. We'll sample it off of a CD. And so they sampled it off a CD. And Blue says his biggest regret about this album, which tells you how good this fucking album is. His biggest regret about this album is that they weren't able to find the song on vinyl to sample it in the way that they sampled the rest of the records.
That's a shame.
Yeah, but I mean, yo, I love this joint.
Yeah, it's a good one. Not a highlight for me. Okay. The next one is a highlight for me. In fact, this might be my highlight of highlights.
Yeah, it's in my top 3 for sure.
There is something about this track that is just like, you can't listen to this song and not bob your head to it. Even if you like fucking hate hip hop music, it's just the bop on here is so good. The hook is so perfect. The flow on here, the vibe is just like, the layering of the production is just, oh man,
it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Low key, this is the record that reminds me the most of making music with Jay.
Word. Okay.
Because he like I said, he was very attentive to melody in a way that me and E weren't necessarily.
Yeah.
And this hooker, try to tell my folks that flow, it ain't easy. Chiming down this element road until it frees, man. Like that just sounds like something that Jay would come up with. But I wrote here a couple of the bars. So I said the flow patterns are so ill and the narrative is so ill.
Yeah.
But he says, hello, hell, welcome to L.A. where devils that dwell play. And then he like flips it into a bar about, like gunplay in L.A. And I feel like the way he describes L.A. is just so... It's the LA that I know.
Gotcha.
Like when I listen to Game records, I don't hear the LA that I know. When I listen to a lot of Dr. Dre records, I don't hear the LA that I know. And his description of like the everyman's LA is something that was just so refreshing to me. I said, the Game, people like the Game were coming out with over dramatized, fabricated, super gangster personas of what LA is. And this is very refreshing.
The only other thing I had to add up to that is I just feel like this is like a Backpackers theme song.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like anyone who's ever just like been like a backpack hip hopper, like this just feels like something that we could just resonates with us, something that we can vibe to.
Yeah.
He's got bars in this one as well.
Yeah, he does.
I'm not gonna get the flow right, so I'm not gonna try to repeat it.
Right.
But maybe I'll have to put in there one of the verses that I like on the edit.
Right.
But yeah, this is just, I don't know. To start the album off with this, it's just like, it's such a good like mood setter, tone setter.
Yeah, for sure.
So but now we get into is it Simply Amazing, Still Blazing? What is the name of this?
So amazing.
So it's weird because so I'm going off of the
Spotify.
The Spotify has like a different track
some of the
naming.
titles are different in the Spotify.
So this one is Soul Amazing, Still Blazing, right?
Yeah.
Is this a highlight for you?
Yes, it is.
Talk about it.
I think that this beat is so simple and so dope. And like this reminds me of like back in college, E and J would come to my dorm room and they would have a CD of beats and they would put something like this on.
Yeah.
And we would just sit there for hours and just flow over it. Like
Gotcha.
it's just a simple, just bread and butter break beat with with really dope, sample chop on it. And man, I just really, really love this joint. I said I there's a couple of things that I had as quotes here. One is my soul a la mode.
Yeah.
He says my soul a la mode twice, which I think is such a dope way to say my soul is on fire.
Yeah.
Like that's just really, really ill to me. And it always resonated with me. And he says it twice. Loved that. And then he says, this nigga mix up Al Green and Pac. Like I just thought that those two, like the juxtaposition of Al Green and Pac was a really, really dope comparison. And then I love the scratches at the end. Zin, 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 with the oh man, that was just so dope. Like such a ill way to do that. And then last but not least, supposedly this song, the original version of this song, was over a Dilla beat. Y'all can't see it, but I'm doing air quotes. because apparently what happened was this was the time frame where Dilla lived in LA. And so somehow they catch up with Dilla and they get a CD of beats from Dilla. And so Blu, picks a few of the beats and he raps over them. This was their favorite one. So they go back to Dilla and they're like, yo, we got this song on your beat. Can we use it? And so they play it for him and he's like, oh, actually, that's not my beat. And he's like, there were a few beats at the end of the CD that were not made by me. They're made by somebody else. And so they're like, oh shit, well, we got a fake Dilla beat. Like we can't, we don't even know who this guy is. So Exile goes back and he makes another beat. And then they use those lyrics and they kind of marry the two together. And that's how this song came together. So what are your thoughts on it?
It's not a highlight for me, but what I will say is I love the use of the scratches, not just at the end, but throughout the entire song.
It's so amazing.
This is the one that reminds me of kind of like a Pete Rock premiere era of Nas.
Yeah.
Like it kind of gives me like a little bit, almost like a memory lane vibe a little bit.
Yeah.
And so this is a record that like I feel like if Nas were to like it just feels like a record that Nas would have made, right? Before it was written.
Right.
In fact, though, I had a thought about this album. Is it like this entire album feels like a record that Nas could have made to some extent, and that Nas was actually trying to make in like the last 2 or 3 years with Hit Boy to some extent.
Okay.
Obviously, the production is a little bit different, but like the vibe of it, you know what I mean? Like no frills, no flashiness. Like let's just put like some good tunes on here.
Yeah.
And to contrast that at the time with what Nas was doing, hip hop is dead or whatever the hell he was doing at that time,
Right.
Still trying to be like relevant in that sense. It's like Nas probably should have, gone into this lane, and Blu is able to capture what we all loved about Nas Illmatic.
Yeah.
And this is one of the tracks that I think reflects that. Now it's not a highlight for me.
Yeah.
But I mean it's still a good song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that because we're not there yet, but the song In Remembrance of Me, Exile basically says that like he's like Blu was clearly like doing his memory lane impression.
Yeah.
And he was like, he said he told him like, yo, bro, you're clearly like trying to do, memory lane. And then they kind of laughed about it together. So that's funny.
So this next one, Juice and Drinks.
It's a mid light for me.
It's not a mid light. I like the song. It's not a highlight though. It definitely has that like Cali vibe. I think the thing that I do like about this is that when you have underground rappers who still just like to drink and smoke or whatever, it's just cool to be reminded of that in tracks like this. But it's cool.
So I felt like the vibe was very Detroit.
Is it?
It
Okay.
sounds. I mean, Tarak is from Detroit.
Gotcha.
And this production reminds me of like what like Tronic. What's the like Black Milk and some of those Detroit like producers from that era. Like this is kind of what their production sounded like. It's cool.
Interesting. Gotcha.
It just doesn't necessarily do it for me. And it's interesting that they say supposedly Blu and Tarak were working on something separate, like a project separately. Yeah. And they were like, we'll just take one of the records from those sessions and we'll just throw it on here. So that's why it sounds so different from like
Blu's verse. His Blu's verse is a highlight for me though.
Really?
Yeah, where he says like
he ain't ignited and bright. He ain't the variety type. So tell him silence his pipes when we invite him to fight. Cause I'll arrive in a height of the night, spitting that spice that'll widen your wife. And have her asking you, why don't we fight? So I can leave and be with Blu, cause he's sliding me right. See, I done put the fear of God up inside of her twice. So ain't nothing you can tell her that is wise, alright? My shit is dynamite. I'll probably die on the mic.
His whole verse on here is he says something else on here. There was just like I was like, yo, like his verse is nice. The song's not a highlight for me.
He's clever. It's funny. The thing that I laughed about with this song is that while it's not a highlight to me at all, it reminds me of a early New Money record. And these are the types of records that me and my crew would make, where we would all sit around. They called the homies called New Money the Tall Can Click. Because they would go to the corner store and buy these tall cans of beer, and everybody would just sit around, and somebody would come up, get your juice and drinks up or some shit like that, and then we would all spit our verses, and then that would be a song.
Could you hear Jurassic 5 on this?
For sure.
See, aren't they from Cali?
Uh-huh.
That's why it gave me a Cali vibe, because it reminded me of that sound.
Okay. I think it's more the hook that gives me the J5 sound, but I feel where you're coming from.
Yeah. All right. So now we get into In Remembrance of Me, and this is where my 8-track run starts.
Okay, wow.
It's I think it's 8-track run or maybe 7-track. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah,
like
seven,
this whole there's only one other song after this that's not a highlight for me.
Yeah.
And so the rest of these songs here, assume from here on out, assume every song I say is a highlight unless specifically stated.
Okay.
So this is the start of my run.
Okay.
Yeah, good song. I love the use of the sample choice and how they use that to incorporate it into the theme of the song. And of course, it's not the only song that does this in general. Plenty of people do this in hip hop. Nevertheless, it's still executed very, very well in here. And this is like the obligatory, like, I'm gonna reflect on my life.
Yeah.
How time flies. Like, it's so good.
Yeah.
Like, this is it's just one of those, like, again, like, even if I don't want to pay attention to Blu, which I absolutely am, but even if I don't want to listen to him, I could just sit and listen to this loop for however long the song is. It's great. It's perfect.
Yeah. I absolutely love this record.
Yeah.
I said this might be the most impressive piece on this album.
Why is that?
It's just he's so ill. He's so relatable.
Yeah.
His flows are perfect.
Yeah.
His storytelling is perfect. And I think even the way he reflects on the fact that he was gonna make a song about his life.
Yeah.
And his mother was basically like, you're too young to make a song about your life. Is interesting. Like, it's like, it's a story within a story. Like, I mean, it's just so ill. So I wrote a few of these bars.
Go ahead.
I said, so apparently he didn't have a kid at the time that he made this project yet. And so it's interesting that on 2 of the records, he talks about being a father, but he's actually not one yet.
Right.
So that's
Came
interesting
from
to
my
me.
nuts.
But it's like I saw the whole world through my rhymes. It's kind of crazy though. He says in the first verse, and then the second verse when he talks about having sex with the girl for the first time, and he says, it's like I saw the whole world through her eyes. It's kind of crazy though. Like I thought it was dope how he brought that back.
The references and the callbacks, that's always good.
Oh man, so great. I thought that was crazy. I thought the whole concept of how this is below the heavens and it's so existential, it's because his father's a pastor. But then on this record, he tells us about how his dad's cheating on his mom. And so that's how he meets the girl or whatever. That story was crazy because then it colors, okay, wow, like this guy's like, he's being raised by a pastor, but then he's seeing the pastor do this fucked up shit, right? So it's like, that's what like creates his world perspective. I thought that was amazing. The bar about, by the way, we lost the championship game by 1. This little fucker hit a 3 at the buzzer. My heart sunk.
I thought about you when he said that.
Relatable shit ever. In fact, story time.
Go ahead.
I'm in high school. I'm in Belgium. So I'll give a little background. I'm in high school. My family moves to Brussels. My dad gets this job, and so basically he negotiates with the company that he says, as a part of his compensation package, he can choose any school for his children to go to, and they have to honor it and basically, pay for it, right? So me and my brother and sister go to a private school, which we had never gone to private school before. So we get to Brussels, and they take us on a tour of like the 3 possible schools that we can go to. We find one school that we love because it's full of American kids, army brats, whatever. So it was like the most relatable for us, right? People that look like us, sounded like us, whatever. So we picked that school. Hey, Dad, we want to go to that school. My dad finds this article somewhere about the school that we end up going to called St. John's, and it calls it the Harvard of high schools. It's more expensive. And my dad's like, this shit's more expensive, and they say it's like Harvard, so you kids are going here. So we get put in this school, and so this school is not as good at sports as the school we wanted to go to, clearly. So, I start playing basketball for this school, and our rival is this other school with all the American kids that are athletes or whatever on it. So our school had been losing for 20 years to this other school. So I'm there and I'm like, oh yeah, yo, we're gonna change this legacy, blah, 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 blah. and I'm gonna keep it real. This school had my number. And the reason I say that is because I want to say I averaged like 27 points per game this season. I must have scored 11 against them in one game and like 13 against them in another game. Like they had me. But anyway, we play them, and we're it's at home, and we'd been losing to the school for 20 years, and I'm there. And so we're winning. We're doing our thing. We're up by 2. buzzer beater. They inbound the ball to this kid. I'm gonna shout him out. His name is Will Hendricks. He was their point guard, cocky ass little white dude. He was their quarterback too. They inbound the ball to the point guard. He pulls up from half court at the buzzer, and it banks it in and makes it at the buzzer. And like literally, you could just see our fans just the wind out of everybody's sails. Like, oh my God.
I've been there. I've been there on both ends.
Oh man, I haven't been. So
you haven't been on you haven't been the one to deliver the game-winning buzzer beater?
Yes, I have, but not in like this type of
environment
where it was like, this game is like everything to the other team, and then like I just like deliver the dagger.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so the dude hits the game winner, whatever, right? Buzzer beater. My heart sunk because I'm like, yo, I thought I was gonna change the legacy of this basketball program. Anyway, fast forward, I go to UVA. We come to freshman orientation first year. Guess who I fucking see at freshman orientation?
Willie Hendricks?
Will Hendrickson. And
so he went to UVA.
He went to UVA. So he comes up to me and he goes, hey, remember that shot, that buzzer beater I hit on you fucking X amount of years ago? You know what I'm saying? Or 2 years ago? But yeah, anyway, that particular story to me was just so relatable. The way he told the whole shit, you know, and then he's talking about he's crying, he wanted to be a pro baller and all that, you know. I just remember like having such a competitive spirit about basketball, and like this story was so great to me.
The reason why I love that line specifically is because of, first of all, if you've ever played competitive sports growing up, basketball in particular, chances are you've been on the receiving end of a buzzer beater, or maybe you've been fortunate enough to deliver the buzzer beater. Right. I've been on both sides of it, I get it. But like the angst that he gets when he delivers, he's like, man, fucking this, that, whatever.
Fucking hit,
yeah,
it's like that's exactly how you feel.
Yeah, that is exactly how you feel. And so I heard that and I started chuckling. I was like, I bet Yinka likes that line too, because I know you play ball.
Yeah.
So it's a really good, that's a really good
And
line.
it's interesting that you say that, because I definitely have delivered a buzzer beater in an important game, and a few important games, but I never really thought about it in that way. Like when I listen to this lyric,
you think about the time
I only think about the time when I lost, because when he talks about how he dropped and he was crying, you know, you're just like in that moment, it's so important to you. And now I can look back at that game and be like, that game doesn't fucking matter, right? But
it mattered
at that time, it mattered so much, right? It was like
it
was the most important thing in the world at the time. So I love that, man. I love this song. I just think he's so good on this.
Yeah, it's a very good song. Very good song. So Blue Collar Worker. I love this one as well.
Okay.
Because I think that like one of the challenges, or one of the things that always impresses me when it comes to musicians is when they tackle a subject that has been tackled thousands of times before, and yet they still make it sound like refreshing and new.
Okay.
And this is just another different approach, like a different angle to the song that he's addressing this topic.
Right.
And I think he lands it well. I mean, just the idea about like, look, I'm just out here working. I'm trying my hardest, and like whatever. Like blue collar worker is like, look, I'm an everyday man. Like I'm just out here grinding. In fact, the lyric that resonates with me is the one he says.
So it's hard for them to trust him, asking what I'm doing every night, like I be screwing every night. The truth is, I'm bruising every mic that I come across, and every now and then drop 100 off, just so you can fucking floss. But that's not enough for you, so I take another loss, wondering why I fucked with you.
Knowing I got stuff to do.
Like that bar, that whole and again, like it's not just the one bar, it's the whole verse. That shit is fire, yo.
Yeah, no, he's ill. I would have called this a highlight back in the day.
Got you.
I think I won't call it one now, but the reason I won't call it one now, which is maybe positive, is that it's less relatable to me now.
Got you. Okay. That's fair. That is fair.
I think this was the record that Jay brought to me, like, yo, and we talked about it at the time because it was so relatable for us, right? 2007, we graduated from college in 2006.
Yeah.
So we're still fucking broke, right? You're a year out of college, you ain't got no fucking money.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, you know, just the relatability of you know, trying to go to the club before 11 o'clock or whatever the fuck so you can get in free and all that shit. Like I feel like I just really related to this. And I think his perspective on kind of how, like, you know, I don't know, women say one thing, but then like they kind of want something different. I think we really related to, you know, it's like you come out of college making $40,000 a year or whatever the fuck, right? And then it's like they want you to get bottle service, and it's like, yo, a bottle service is like fucking 2 G's. That's like that's like 1/20th of what I make in a year. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I think his perspective and persona was very, very relatable to me at the time. It's a little less relatable at the time, but or at the current time.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's still dope.
It still highlights me because I remember how I was when I was in that phase.
Right.
You know what I mean? I like everything you're saying. I was like, yeah. I mean, I've been there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's still a highlight for me. Plus, I like the song. I like that kind of sample choice.
Yeah.
Just that old kind of like 60s soul that wasn't necessarily
like
popular
a
on the radio.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
That's dope.
It's really good. So
yeah,
so I
and
like that one.
I like the little, I guess you can call it like a soliloquy or whatever at the beginning where he's like, you know, women, like, they say that they want you to work, but then when you go to work, then they don't want you to work. Like I like how he was kind of explaining it. That was funny.
Yeah. Dancing in the Rain.
This is so good.
Yeah, it's very good.
This is so good. This is definitely a highlight. I said beautiful production.
Beautiful, absolutely.
Reminds me of something that Dilla or Madlib would have sampled during the time frame when they got really into Brazilian music.
Yeah.
Like even like Runnin' or some of these, you know, records that they you know, that Dilla would have done.
It's funny that you say that. The only note that I have on here, because unfortunately I didn't have that many notes for this song, is it gives me like kind of like a breezy Mediterranean Brazilian vibe. And in fact, one of my Spotify playlists is actually just called like Breezy, and it's got a lot of like, this is where that song would have gone into. Okay. Just kind of like the fall, just like
that like flamenco guitar situation.
Exactly. Yeah.
I said I love some of these more melodic hooks that Blu comes up with, and I feel like the metaphor of like pushing through depression as dancing in the rain is actually like really, really profound. You know, and then, you know, he kind of, this is where we get like the narrative of like him being a starving artist and, you know, dealing with homelessness and losing loved ones and etc. And like pushing through those things as like, you know, dancing in the rain. I think it's just really dope. Like he was killing these introspective bars.
Unfortunately, I don't have as much to add. I don't know. I just really love this song. That's all I can say. The production from it, like you say. And this is actually one of those where I actually don't get caught up too much on what he's saying just because I'm so, I guess, mesmerized and enthralled by the music, if you will.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
There's other ones. Yeah, I just don't pay as much attention. Except for on the hook, obviously, because his hooks are amazing.
Well, one of the things that I thought was interesting, right, is so I think that this album is very pristinely mixed.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things about it, as somebody who now, you know, creates and mixes music, is like, I think that it was mixed very dark.
Okay.
Some of the samples are brighter, and it feels like they darken the textures in order to make it. It's a very blue sounding album, right?
Yeah.
Like it's blue. However, the particular phrase that he says at the end of the hook here, which is "just move your ass," right? Yeah. It was interesting that was his choice of words, but there's a certain like sibilance to how he says ass. It's like, ooh, ass. Just move your ass.
It almost sounded like you were saying ash.
Yeah,
like,
and it feels like they mixed it that way on purpose. Yeah. And I just wonder like why that choice was made. Because I feel like when you mix something dark, you kind of remove the sibilance from the S's. Yeah. And I mean, it's just a random like music nerd thing, but like I always wondered why that sounded like that.
I thought that was weird as well.
Yeah. So. And it's like, the beginning of the hook is so beautiful. Oh, nobody want to dance slow in the rain. It's just like, move your ass.
Move your ass.
Oh man. Yeah. But anyway, dope.
So next we have First Things First.
Yeah.
Is this a highlight for you?
Yes, it is.
It's definitely one for me.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think so first of all, we talk often about like the girl tracks on records. And he's got several. Yeah, he's got several tracks on here that deal with like women in relationships. Right. This is a girl track. And one of the things you always bring up this point, or you were the first one to bring up this point, and it's a very good point, is that most girl tracks you have to question if girls really like them, right? This is a girl track, though. I'm not even sure girls like it. This is a girl track for guys. I think so.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So first of all, the thing I love about this is that he has that kind of like that guitar melody that was very, very prominent in a lot of these like popular girl records from like Ja Rule or Nelly or whatever. it seems like that element of the beat is something that could have put this on the radio as a single. But then you also have like these crazy samples in the background that sound like it's like Pete Rock Verbal Murder.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like a hard hip hop beat as well.
Right.
So you have the contrast of it that gives it a very layered sound that makes it sound like, it's radio friendly, but this is like a hard hip hop track.
Yeah.
The thing, oh my God, like there's so many notes I could say about this song. All right. So.
And I can act conscious, but if we talk politics, you notice that I'm out of the loop, cause I don't follow it. I rock fitted caps. Koofies ain't for blue, see, I eat red meat, cause tofu don't move me. And women are confusing, but that's for later on.
The thing I love about this is when he starts talking about how like, he's a rapper. Mm-hmm. And so he's trying to step to this girl as if he is a rapper, right? But he doesn't want to say that because she's going to associate his being a rapper to all these other things that he's not.
Right.
So then you get to hear him describe what it is to be like a commercial rapper versus a conscious rapper.
Right.
And so the way he describes a conscious rapper is great. Like he's talking about koofies. He's like, I like red meat. I'm not a vegan, which is hilarious. He's like, I'm not up on my politics, all this, that, and the other. But he's like, underground cats can go to the club too. Like that whole vibe. I find myself like, one, I'm digging the music. I'm digging lyrically. I'm digging the flow, but I'm also just kind of like chuckling and laughing because I'm like, bro, I get it. Like, I get you. I get it.
Bro, I laugh so hard at this song. And the reason is because it transports me back to being an underground rapper.
I feel that.
And, me and Jay used to joke about this all the time because it's like we would go do these shows. And man, like underground hip hop shows don't got no hoes, man. I don't mean to say it that way, but like you go there, it's a bunch of dudes, it's some real crunchy looking chicks in the crowd. You know what I'm saying? And
shout out to my crunchy sisters. Yo.
Hey, shout out to y'all. But it was a struggle because I think we as underground rappers, myself included, probably Jay included, probably E included, you see yourself a certain way.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we necessarily felt like our fan base was a reflection of us.
Right.
And so I think that this song is so funny because like you're saying, it's like he's like trying to tell you who he actually is as opposed to who you would perceive him to be because he is this underground rapper. And so
that's why it's not a girl joint for girls. It's a girl joint for us.
But I mean, like we as hip hoppers, you always had to have a song like this. And I just remember being in these underground, these open mics and, whatever showcases that we would do. And every rapper had like a song like this where you'd be like, yo, where the ladies at? This is the joint for you. And then you're doing it and there's only one girl and she's up at the front dancing. And then it's just a bunch of dudes in the back. And it's kind of like, wait, why did I even perform this? Like, I don't know.
The other thing too, you talked about relatability, right? Mm-hmm. And look, I'm not saying that these songs where you're talking about going up to a woman and macking on a woman, I'm not saying you can't relate to that. Mm-hmm. If you talk to women and you've had success with women, you can obviously relate to that, right? But like real talk, no one really approaches it from this angle as well, right? Like not from, like, I feel like artists who might have done it from this angle have kind of like made a joke of it.
Yeah.
And while this is funny, it's also real talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And so to be able to just be like, nah, like, I'm trying to talk to you and these are the problems. I'm like, bro, I feel you, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I really, really feel you.
Yeah.
So, definite highlight for sure. This record is so much fun.
And then the other thing that I love about this, which is an Easter egg, is kind of the cast of characters here, right? So this is Miguel, who is now a fucking multi-platinum artist.
Is it the same Miguel?
Yes.
Because when I looked up on the credits, it didn't.
Miguel, he went as Miguel Jantel back then. But yeah, so this is early Miguel. Okay. And
because I was wondering that, but when I looked at the credits, I was like, no, it's a different Miguel.
Yeah, no, this is Miguel. And
that's awesome.
He sounds amazing on this. This is before all the pretense of having all this fame and celebrity.
Yeah.
But apparently they went to high school together. They both went to San Pedro High.
That's cool.
And they actually had a very short-lived group where they called themselves Rhythm and Blue. So Miguel and Blue are actually friends from school. So I think that's a really, really just dope
that's awesome.
In and of itself.
That's cool. So now we get into Greater Love.
Yeah.
Is this a highlight for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I love. First of all, it's 2 songs in a row that are kind of dealing with romance or intimacy, women, this, that, and the other. The sample choice is great. And like the heart on this feels like it'd be like a Ghostface track. Like I feel like if Ghostface had this beat, he would have ripped it. Just done something crazy off the wall that we love from Ghostface.
Yeah.
the verse on here again, like I'm not even going to go through it because the whole verse is just crazy. But when he says like get a little room for Azulito, like I thought that was dope too. Love that shit so much.
I thought that was dope too.
Like the fact that you would take it from a different language and create a word that's not even a word, but yet we know exactly what it is. Right. That shit was hot to me. That shit was so fire.
He's fire, man.
Yeah, but that whole verse is crazy though too.
And I think that also, I think that in several places in the past in hip hop, we've heard like kind of artists juxtapose like their love for hip hop and their love for women and the same thing, whether it's, I used to love her or whatever. But I feel like he did it, and it's a recycled concept in a way, but he did it in his own way, and it would like felt fresh.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it was really dope.
So then we get into Good Life.
Yeah.
And first of all, to start it off, what I love about this song is, I mean, obviously musically it's great, but I love the outro to the previous song. Where if you pay attention to it, he's talking about like all the enemies and how I'm not afraid of like the Rockefellers or the banks or this, that, and the other. I'm afraid that when my son asked me, well, what were you doing? Right. And then it goes into this song.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because the whole first verse is like, look, Aloe Black comes in the second verse and he's fine. But like, that's not what I'm paying attention to. I'm paying attention to his first verse and his third verse.
Right.
And the first verse is very like micro. It's very like personal. These are my struggles.
Yeah.
The third verse is very like macro. This is our struggles. This is what we're going through. Right. But the thing is like to have this song come in after the outro to the previous song, where it's just like, well, the question is, well, what were you doing? It's like, well, I couldn't do anything. Like I felt so fucking helpless. Like you guys are showing me all these images of the good life. I'm fucking struggling.
Right.
But he doesn't do it in a way that's like victimizing.
Exactly.
He doesn't do it in a way where he's blaming anyone. He's just like, look,
this is what it
is. I'm grinding. I'm trying.
Yeah.
It's how he is able. Like this is for someone who is 22, and like that's a really fucking mature way to approach this.
Compound that with the fact that he's actually not even a father.
Yes.
It's amazing. Like he was a genius. The one kind of Easter egg on this is apparently this beat was submitted to Common for the B album.
Interesting.
And then he Exile was one of the producers that was asked to submit some things. It kind of sat in the pipeline for a little while, and then Common didn't end up using the track.
That's a good thing.
So then
Common would not have done this song justice.
So then Blu got it, and he killed it.
I think and I love the music on here as well. Just the way that they use this sample. I'm not even sure if it's a sample for the.
Yeah, it is.
Like the way they use it is really, really good. But I think too, just the way, like I said, just like the way that he handles this song. I think that there's other songs that I like more just in terms of the vibe, but in terms of just an artist showing like maturation, if you will, or just like being really, really smart. I think that this, especially when you combine it with the outro to the previous song, is probably his most masterful work conceptually and thematically. He really, really executes it like just so perfectly.
Yeah.
And the fact that both you and I highlighted the fact is like he's not coming off, like he's not blaming anyone.
Right.
Like that just it just so lands so well for me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think this might be my favorite beat on here.
It's a really, really good beat.
And
too.
the reason is because, my outlaw brain, right? Like I can decompose how difficult it was to make this beat. So the Show Me the Good Life thing, I believe is a Roberta Flack sample.
Interesting. Okay.
He isolates just the vocal and he uses that. And then he takes the same record and he slices it up into really, really thin slices. So you can barely even tell that like the beat, like the instrumental is from the same record. And then he puts instrumentation on top of it. Like
it is a really good beat.
Yes. Yeah. Genius. Man, Exile, like I feel like we also have to make sure we give him his props because Blu is such a great lyricist on here and does such great storytelling and narrative that sometimes you forget like how great Exile is on this as well.
I said before that Narrow Path might be my highlight of highlights. I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah.
This might be one of my favorite songs on the record too. It's so good.
It's so good. And then, the only other thing I'll say is like early Aloe Black. It makes me smile because, Aloe Black is now also like a multi-platinum charting vocalist. And so, it just reminds me so much of Cali. So my funny story about my boy Thirst from New Money, he's cool with Aloe Black and cool with some of these other folks because, California kind of music scene is fairly small. He's from Orange County. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not talking like The Game. I'm talking like dudes that were. So I'll never forget. This album comes out, and Jay tells me about it. Jelani tells me about it. He's like, "Yo, you got to hear it." I hear it, and I'm talking to my New Money homies, and I'm saying, "Yo, man, like we got to work on something. We were gonna work on a project together." And I'll never forget my boy Thirst, who knows Aloe Black and knows some of these folks. He calls me and he goes, "Yo, Blu is really blowing up." He was like, "Aloe Black's doing his thing." And he was like, "Yo, why aren't you on this level?" Right?
Interesting.
And he had a real ass conversation with me. And he said, "Look, man," he said, "Blu used to sleep on Aloe Black's couch. He slept on a bunch of other couches." He said at one time or other, everybody in this crew, whether it's Miguel, whether it's Aloe Black, whether it's Blu, was homeless for their dream of doing music.
Yeah.
He said, so it's cool, you got dope bars and everything, but are you willing to do this shit?
Yeah, it's a sacrifice.
To get where these guys are.
Yeah.
He's like, because you have talent to be on their level, but they have more sacrifice to go towards this or whatever. So it was just a really interesting conversation that I remember because it really resonated with me. But yeah, man, Aloe Black is such a relic of Cali. He's a churchy Orange County kid who has 2 C's in his name on some gang shit because he's from California. And I love just the California things about this album and the artists that are on it as well.
I didn't know that about Aloe Black. That's cool.
Yeah, he was a rapper on here. He didn't even really sing like that before.
Yeah.
And then now he's making records with Avicii and shit that are going 10 times platinum.
I never even saw Aloe Black in that light. I've always seen him in the light that we know.
Yeah, he was an underground rapper.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we get into Simply Amazing, and this is him just spitting straight bars.
Yeah.
I love it. Look, I don't give a fuck if the lyric is problematic. I don't care. Where he says the game is full of homos backwards, mo-hos and rappers, no flows, but keep shows packing at us. Fuck that, we going platinum plus and still riding the back of the bus because the bucks don't matter. That shit, I was.
Yo, I wrote the exact same phrase down, but I said the homos backwards thing. Yeah. I said this line sounds exactly like it was lifted from Jelani's rhyme book when we were in college. In fact, I think that he actually has a bar that's almost verbatim the exact same bar.
Impressive.
Yeah,
that's impressive because that's my favorite. Dope. That's my favorite bar on this particular song.
Yeah, he has a very similar bar. I don't remember what it was. But I said similar to the intro. This is just lyrical onslaught over crazy production. I said this is the type of record that Disaster would have done.
Gotcha.
And definitely would have been the record that I did. And then when we did live performances, I came out and I rapped this. You know what I mean? Something to let cats know, that I got bars. And I feel like another bar that I had kind of quoted is my papa thug, I'm a son of a blood with blue gators on. I've always loved that bar because I think it really, really embodies Cali culture.
Yeah.
And I feel like everybody is at least, probably less than 1 degree of separation from gangs.
Yeah,
and
I
depending
think you were talking
on
about that before, yeah.
Right. And depending on your generation, you can be, your mom is this and you're that or whatever. And so just, all of the illuminations of his dad on this album are so interesting to me. It's okay, so his dad was a pastor. His dad pimped a little bit or at least was out here with hoes. And his dad was a blood, so it's just I don't know. I've always loved that bar.
Got you.
Yeah.
So now we get into my last highlight in the run.
Okay.
Which is Cold Hearted, featuring again Miguel. This was actually when I saw it, I was like, that voice sounds familiar.
Yeah.
And then I saw Miguel, but then the name wasn't highlighted, so I was like, oh, that's just some random Miguel. I didn't realize that Miguel. I didn't see the Miguel Jante up before that.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jante, is it Jante?
I think it's Jantel.
Jantel.
Yeah, but that's his real name.
Yeah. That's this is the last highlight in my run. The way that they sample this and the drums that they use is really, really impressive.
Yeah.
And again, like he's got several songs on here that sound like very like retrospective and reflective, and yet they all sound fresh and original. They don't sound overdone.
Yep.
And this is just another one that's just like really good.
Yeah.
And you highlighted Exile on Show Me the Good Life. For me, this was the one where I was just like, man, like to chop it up the way that you did, and then just like and give us the drums like that.
Yeah,
it's just, I don't know, it's really, really good.
Yeah, this is my highlight of highlights.
Yeah,
I love this beat. I feel like Miguel sounds amazing on it. I feel like Blu is great on this joint. I love the cold-hearted and young, a dumb kid with a gun. Like I just feel like that's like, oh man, this shit's so relatable. Like
very relatable.
I feel like I'm
relatable.
him. Yeah, it's like too relatable. It's almost like when they used to have those like Saturday morning after school specials where they told you like, stay in school, kids, like stay away from guns, like stay away from drugs, but like in a way that's just so relatable. And man, I just love this song. This is my highlight of highlights.
It's for me, it's kind of like a three-way toss-up between, like I said, Narrow Path, Good Life, and this one. So good.
Yeah,
so good.
And this is my last highlight as well.
Oh, okay. All right. So let's still talk about I guess The World is Below the Heavens. This is it part 1, right?
Or this is the one that's it's Below the Heavens part 1 on Spotify.
It's cool. I don't really have that much to actually. Well, there was a verse that I wanted to highlight.
Somebody once told me that I'm already in hell. Freedom's a state of mind, it's just a heart of me's in hell. I free my slave mind, so a part of me's in hell. So even when it's hard to breathe, a part of me in hell. So part of me, you gotta try hard to be yourself, cause you can't get to heaven being anybody else. And I was raised by a reverend, yet the lessons didn't help. Had to get them for myself. I was told hell is hot, but had to feel it for myself. So I left home as a young child, smiling as I stepped on, facing the world butt naked without my weapon. I lost my smile in exchange, I put a vest on. Now that my premature stress is gone, I got problems to face as a man. I was told you either stand or you fall. Long as you know that when you walk, you holding hands with a God. That alone can turn the dark to a walk in the park. I only talk from my heart, so open yours when you're listening. Every man has his own heaven, but the difference is the way that he envisions it. So if you make your heaven pictureless, by the time you die, you'll be drifting in an imageless field. So build your heaven full of blessed thoughts. That's real. You can stress it and just let it walk. I got a question. If a man can make his own heaven, then can he make his path to get to it too? I only spit fluid truth, and I spit it for the listeners, so I'm spitting to you. You say it's hell, I say it's bullshit we getting through. Just think about it. Every man has his own heaven, but shit, you gotta go through hell to be a man first, and understand first. Hell is what you choose to call the present. That's why you're going through it. I just choose to call it stress. And tell you fools the truth, I don't feel it's why I'm destined. So you can call it hell, but bruh, I just say I'm below the heavens.
That's so ill.
Yeah.
That's so ill.
Really, really, really good bar there.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Blu is very dope on here. But my favorite part of this record is how it breaks down at the end, where they cut the beat out and then you just hear claps.
Yeah.
And then you just hear Miguel and he's harmonizing over it. And then they say, bring the band in, because that's how it transitions from part 1 to part 2.
Yeah.
And then Coochie Monsters was actually Blu's crew that was a band.
Oh, word.
So then the band comes in and you start to hear like drums and you hear different instruments or whatever come in, and that's what leads you into the part 2.
Word. So I'm surprised that part 2 is not a highlight for you, just because it's a musical interlude. We love our musical interludes on this show.
Yeah, I think it's just by the time that this came, I don't think that I necessarily was super into it. But the thing that I do like about this is like the old 90s kind of shout outs thing, you know, where it's like you got the musical interlude and there's like, yeah, shout out to this person, shout out to that person. Like, I like that shit.
Got you.
So it's not a highlight, but I like it.
It's a highlight for me just because I think it's one of those musical interludes. The song just dedicated to the music that references. It's a good like wrap up for everything.
Yeah.
So it's like an official outro, but yet they do give us one other song, which I also like as well.
That was a bonus cut though on the original version. Yeah, I think I Am is a bonus cut on the original version.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I like I Am as well.
Yeah.
I Am is also a highlight for me. I don't really have anything I don't have any lyrics to highlight on it. I liked it mainly just because I just love what Exile does with the sample.
I tussle back and forth with it because I think it's kind of corny, but at the same time I think it's kind of cool. Apparently this was another beat where Blu found the Sesame Street record where Grover is saying, I am blue. And so he brought it to Exile and was like, chop this up. So apparently when they first started working on this album, Blu had this idea to make an album that was half beats by Exile and half beats by Oh No, who's Madlib's little brother.
Yeah. We like Oh No.
Right. And so so apparently they had like one of the records in the can, but Blu had brought this beat to Exile to make a beat. And Exile was basically saying, you can't record with Oh No until after our beat battle, because apparently they were going to this beat showcase where it was Exile versus Oh No, and they were gonna hit each other with different beats. The Yes I'm Blue record was one of the beats that Exile premiered at this beat battle that he battled with Oh No. And according to Blu, after he heard what Exile came with in that beat battle, he was like, yeah, I don't even need to record with Oh No. I'm gonna just do it all with you, or whatever. And so that's how he ended up working just with Exile. But
interesting.
Yeah, man. I really I like it conceptually, but at the same time, it's Sesame Street. So
I just think it sounds good. I love it, and it transitions a little bit as well. And I think that it's one of those. It comes at the end of the album.
Right.
I am if I feel like an album wraps up well, and you give me another song, I am way more forgiving of that song if it doesn't necessarily fit with the rest of the pieces.
Yeah.
If it comes at the end, right? Yeah. So because of that, I'm like, you've given me everything. You've given me a full meal, and you're just giving me a little dessert, little cherry on top. I'm here for it. I'm gonna eat it all. It's great.
And I mean, he has quirky bits where he's just showing his personality. Like that one skit where he's like, I don't like Exile. I like his beats, but his beats like me too, or whatever. Like it's kind of corny. It's kind of corny, but it just shows their relationship. Like it's authentic. So I like it from that perspective too.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know what are our final thoughts on this. I don't really have any
final thoughts. This is an excellent album. It's a really, really good album, and I think it's an album that maybe like when we talk about the kind of lyrical miracle spiritual era of hip hop, I think to me this is probably the last record like that I like really was like impressed by, like, oh my gosh, this feels fresh, this feels new. And I feel like most of the other ones that did something like this going forward, I can't think of one that I'm like, like it really worked in the same way.
The thing that's so good about this is because while he is being like lyrical, there's nothing wasted on here. There's no word that he puts on this album that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And the fact that the beats, you could just rock to the beats by themselves. Yeah. They blend so well with his voice.
Right.
And the fact that thematically everything is just there. Like, I don't care if you're into gangster hip hop or conscious hip hop or whatever. Like, just as a man, and a woman too, I don't know, but I'm gonna speak for myself as a man. Like, even if you're out here balling, like, you have to understand what he's talking about. Yeah. You have to.
I agree.
You know what I mean? So like, he's so relatable.
Yeah. And I think like these existential themes is part of what it works with, because I feel like everybody at some point in their life has had the thought of like, why am I here? Like, what's my purpose? What should I be doing? And like, that's very much what this album is. It's a 22-year-old guy, like just trying to figure it out.
Crazy,
And it's like, we've all been there, So super dope, man. I love this album.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that should wrap it up for our discussion on Below the Heavens. What's actually the full title? What is it? It's
there is something else on the cover. And I never read that joint.
It's Blu Exile, Below the Heavens, but it's something
in hell. Happy with your imaginary friends.
Gotcha.
Something like that.
Okay. Well,
I don't know. Everybody knows this as Below the Heavens.
Yeah. Some people just know it. A lot of people just know this as Blu Exile.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
That's real.
So
I also read somewhere that that initially when they put out the first 12-inch for the first single on this, that it just said Blu.
Interesting.
And then I don't know if they complained or what they did, but they were like, "Yo, no, we're Blu and Exile. Like we're as a group." So that's dope too.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that should wrap it up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And if we missed anything, you guys have any comments, let us know.
Let us know. Peace.
Peace.